All right, hey guys, we're back here today. I wanted to show you guys quickly how to create something that was actually a request from someone, which was a slide out menu in iOS with Swift. So it'd be, let me see if I can get a picture so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. iOS slide out menu. Something basically like these. So where you have a menu that kind of comes out from the side when you click a button in the navigation bar and slides out from the right to the left. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll do this pretty quickly today. We're going to do everything pragmatically, so no storyboards or anything like that, just because it's actually simpler. So we'll just call this slide out menus in Swift. Everything else is fine. All right, so we have a storyboard. We're going to actually delink this storyboard from our project. So you go up here to the project, go down where it says main interface. That's the linked storyboard. You have your launch storyboard, your main storyboard. We're just going to delete it. All right, and we'll run our app from here. See what we get. What's going to end up happening is you're going to see a black window show up. That means that there's no initial view controller that's associated with it. We need to set a root view controller. So if we go into our app delegate, we have a window property here, you'll see. So this will load up right now. And it's most likely going to just load up with nothing. Let's see. It might stay white for a second, but if not, that's fine. What we'll do is we'll scroll down. We'll say window. And we're going to assign it a UI window, which is just basically a class, which is the main window. And we're going to use the initializer, which is a frame. And we're going to say UI screen.main.bounds. What that does is that basically says set the frame of this window we're defining to the entire size of the device's window. So whatever that might be. And there's something we need to do, which is there's a method on here that says make key visible, which says show the window that makes the key window. So that's that. Now we need to put something called a view controller, our view controller class that we have here, view controller, right? This is the one we want to show, and we're going to build out our menu in this. And we want to basically instantiate it like this, a view controller. So we say let VC equal VC view controller. Now what we want to do is we want to say window.root view controller, which is this is saying what is our initial view controller, very similar to like when you go into storyboard here, pop open this guy, select your view controller, this arrow. That's basically saying it's our initial view controller. I believe there's a property, if you click here, yep, is initial view controller. If I toggle this on and off, that's basically the root view controller. That's what that's saying. So for this scene. So for us, we're doing it pragmatically. So we're saying window.rootViewController equals something, right? Well, we want to embed it in a UI navigation controller, right? Because we want a navigation bar at the top so we can have our button. And we have a few different methods and initializers here. We're going to use root view controller because that's the one that specifies initial, and we're going to pass in our VC, just like that. And so the next thing we're going to do is that's all for setting our initial one. Let's go back into our view controller, and I'm going to just go ahead and create a function in here, which I always like to do. You guys probably know this by now, is set up views. And I like to do all of my view initialization in this just because it makes things a little bit cleaner in terms of just code organization. I think this is the way I just do it. You guys can do it however you want. I'm just going to set self.view.background color equal to blue here, and let's run that just so you guys can see what we have. So let this run. So we should have a blue view with a top navigation bar. Awesome, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to remove that, and I will actually just set it to, we'll just actually do this. I'll set it to white for now. All right, so one thing we want to note is that actual sliding menu bar that slides over, it's all it is just a view. So we can embed a table view inside of our view. We can do so many different things because all classes almost in iOS inherit from a view at their base. UI view controller, which inherits from a view, and this object in a view. So you'll see if you drill down into these things and you go back into them, most of the time, every class, like a UI table view controller, basically if you drill down all the way to the bottom of all of its parents' classes, they're usually views. So we'll create a view and we'll just call this a menu view and we'll make it a UI view. Remember, we're creating a closure here, so it's an anonymous function that basically returns a type. That's why we need that these parentheses on the end of this closure. And we'll just say in here, let view equal a UI view, and we'll return the view here. Okay, so now what we can do is we can start specifying a few different things on this view and the properties that that are associated with this view. So the first thing we might want to do is let's make it a color. So I'm just going to say view.background color. Let's make it an orange color, which is kind of nice, I think. And because we're doing everything with constraints in code, we need to set translate auto resizing max constraints to false. You always have to do this for every single view that you have. And I think that's good for now. So that's our view. So now we need to go into our setup view function. We need to add this view. Let's say add the menu view into the view. Okay. And we'll just say self.view.add subview menu view. Okay. And now we need to set our constraints on our view. Okay. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to use something called layout anchors because I think they're the easiest in my opinion. Some people might prefer one style over another. It really comes down to like what you prefer. I prefer anchors. iOS 9 plus. In iOS 9, we actually got layout anchors. I think they make it insanely easy to use, but it really comes down to what you prefer. So let's also actually really quickly set up our navigation bar at the top. Okay, and we want to do a few things. We want to, one, maybe just give it a navigation title. So we'll just say navigation item dot title, and we'll just say menu app, or I'll just say menu. And let's actually add in a button. The way we add a button is we get a hold of an object called our navigation item, which is the same one we have above. That's basically an item that's actually going to be into the bar, and we want the left bar. You can specify something called a right bar, which would basically set the right bar item. It'd set the button on the right side or the left side, whatever you prefer. We will go ahead and just do the left side for this one. And we're going to set it equal to it needs to be a UI bar button item. And there's an initializer on this, which there's several. You can set an image if you want. That's how you see like those hamburger style buttons. We're going to do this one, title with string for now, because I don't have an actual asset or button we want to use. We'll just say show menu. Okay. And for bar button style, we're just going to say done. You can say plain. You can see this one says glow when tapped. This one, the style for a done button is an example of a done button when complete some task, return some previous state. We'll just say plain, I guess. That's fine, actually. Target, self, and action. Okay, interesting. We need to put a selector in here. Remember, selectors are basically saying run this function. So we're going to create a function that's going to be called handle show menu. Okay. And we need to, before this starts complaining, add our handle show menu down here. Okay. Just to create the function so this will go away. And it's complaining because it wants an extra parentheses there. That's fine. Okay. One last thing for the navigation. We're going to just say navigation controller, which is the entire navigation bar, and then navigation bar to get the actual, get the navigation bar. That one. And we're going to say is translucent. That means that you can see right here in this background, so you have the blue, you can see through the bar. We don't want it to be like, we just want it to be a color. Because when we slide our view across, we don't want to be able to see the backing part of the view. So we'll say false. Okay, pretty good. Let's go back in and finish our constraints down here in code. Okay, so the one thing we want to keep in mind is we're going to have to modify the constraints when we show the menu. So as we're sliding out our navigation, our menu bar, pardon me, the constraints that we initially set up in our view have to be able to move and change. So we need to get a constant or get a hold of one of our constraints. So I'm going to create a constant. It's going to be called right anchor. Okay, and it's going to be of a type ins layout constraint. and it's optional. And what this is going to allow us to do is going to be allow us to modify this when we do the or run the animation in code. So we do need to have this outside of here. If we just go in here and we say, menu bar.right anchor, and set it, and then we set our left, we set our height and our width, the issue is going to be we're not going to be able to actually modify this outside of the scope of this function. So for us to animate this down here in our handle show menu later, we need to have a reference to it. Okay, awesome. So we've got our right anchor as an NS layout constraint, which is optional. We need to actually go ahead and assign it. So we can just say right anchor in here, and we'll say it equal to menu view, okay? And we're going to say right anchor of the menu view, and we're going to use this this guy, which is constraint equal to. And what we'll do is, this is just an initializer. We're just going to say we want to assign it to the views.left anchor, because when we load this app up and we don't want to see it, okay? And we'll offset this a little bit by a constant. I'll say -10, because we're going to add a shadow into this actual menu in a few minutes, and we don't want to be able to see it. Okay, that's awesome, but it is not active. And we notice if you try to go here and say is active equal true, you're going to get a compiler warning. That's because you're assigning something and you're assigning something again. You cannot do that. So what we need to do is put the active in a separate statement. We need to say right anchor dot is active equal to true, like that. Okay, perfect. Now we can set the rest of the constraints. So we want to do something called a top anchor, right? Which is going to be constraint equal to the views.top anchor. We'll set this as active equal to true. And if you're having some trouble with these constraints or you're confused about how they work, go ahead and check out another video. I'll probably make a video at some point that talks about how to use all the different types of NS layout constraints, visual format, VFL, and layout anchors. But for this video, I guess if you do have a question about it, just shoot me a direct message or shoot me something in the comments and I'll try to explain it as best I can. But what we want to do is top anchor. We want to say, so we need a height and a width anchor as well. Our height is actually really simple. We're just going to say constraint equal to our views height, right? We want our menu bar to be the exact same size as our views height, right? Pretty easy. Is active equal to true. And our width. The width is very interesting, right? Because it really is actually dependent on what you want. What I think looks really nice is we're gonna do basically like 2/5 of our actual views width, but it's up to you. This can be, how far you want it to slide out. Do you want it to slide out like 20%, 30%, 40%, 50, 100%, however you really want it to look. That's what this is gonna be. So for the sake of this, I found that self.view. I'm sorry, we're using the wrong initializer here. We want to do constraint equal to constant like that. And then we're going to say self.view.frame. And this is where we're going to take the entire width of the frame. So that's this entire width of this view frame. And we're going to divide it by 2.5. So relatively, this should give us a nice, I would say about 35, 40%. Set this equal to true. Okay, awesome. So if I run this right now, we're gonna have a white background, we're gonna have our navigation bar at the top, we're gonna have our navigation button, but we're gonna have no view present. And why is that? We should see an orange view, right? So we have the show menu, does nothing. We can't see it. That's interesting. Well, the reason is because it is actually in the view. It's pinned over here, basically, to the left anchor of this edge. We just can't see it. So when we hit show menu, we want it to slide in, right? Okay, not terribly bad, right? Okay, so what we want to actually go ahead and do is we're gonna go down and we're gonna say animate show or handle show menu, okay? And so the first thing we need to do is we need to change our right anchor position, right? Okay, well, we can't do that because one's already active. I can't assign my right anchor to something else because it's just not going to work. It's going to take this one that's currently active. So we need to do something called drop the current right anchor, right? And the way we do that is we just take our current right anchor and we say is active to false. Okay, simple. Now it has no right anchor it's holding on to. And I'm going to actually introduce a Boolean value here that's called is showing, just for the sake of is the menu showing or not. So we can operate on, we don't need to use an if else statement down here, like if the menu is open, if the menu is closed, if the menu is showing, if it's not. We're just going to basically use a ternary operator on this guy. So I'm going to set the default value to false, and you'll see right now, because when the view loads, it's going to be hidden, right? So it's false, it's not showing. And then if you press this button, we're going to just flip it to true. So the way we do that is we come down here, we're going to say, we're going to create a new value called our constraints updates, okay? And it's going to be an NS layout constraint, okay? And it's going to be equal to our Boolean value of is showing, right? But we're going to use this question mark, which is a ternary operator. So basically what this does is it lets you assign two separate values based on the condition of the Boolean. So this is a Boolean. You can only use a ternary operator on this Boolean. And so what it's going to say is, okay, we're going to assign this constraint update is showing. If it's false, we're going to do one thing. If it's true, we're going to do the other. So the first one after the question mark has to be the true one, right? It has to be, okay, if it's true, we're doing this. The one following it is going to have a semicolon, and then it's going to say, if it's false, we're going to do something else. Okay, so what do we want to do? Well, we want to basically not show, we want to hide the menu, right? If it's true. Okay, because we're coming from a true condition. So that's kind of simple. I can just take this current condition I already have right here and use this one, right? This one's already hidden. Okay, now I need to use this colon, and I'm going to basically assign the false value. So if it's false, what do I want to do? Well, I want to show it, right? Okay, that's pretty simple. So the way that I do that is I'm basically going to define a new constraint. I'm going to say menu view, right? Dot right anchor. Constraint equal to NS layout object, and it's going to be self dot view dot left anchor. Okay, so very similarly to the other one, except we're going to define a constant which we're going to use as the offset for the value, and the offset is going to be the width of the menu view. So we're going to say self dot menu view dot frame dot width. So what that's going to do is it's saying, okay, if it's true, put it back where it was, hide it back and pin it to this left edge, this left anchor. If it's false, expand it in and animate it in. We're going to use an animation block in a second, but to the width of the view. And we defined the width, right, as 2/5 of the entire frame, right? This entire window, okay? So it's going to slide it in that same amount and then still pin the right edge that far from the left edge. So we're not actually modifying anything. Okay, lastly, we need to assign the right anchor to the constraint update, right? That's giving it its new value. And then we need to set the right anchor is active. Okay, so here we're, assigning the new value and setting it active. Okay, looking pretty good, right? So how do we animate that in? Well, that's kind of easy. We just use the UI view animation block, right? And we're going to use initial spring velocity for this so it kind of looks cool. Otherwise, it will look kind of boring to me, at least. We use 0.3 for the animation duration, 0 for the delay, spring duration, or using spring with a dampening 1, and initial spring velocity of 10, so it's super bouncy and cool. And we'll say curve ease out, just so it kind of speeds out and speeds up and then slows down. And then animations, we're going to add in something called self.view.layout if needed. Where's that? Layout if needed. There you are. Okay. And completion block, we'll just say nil for now. Okay, what does that do? So this is the kind of like the big takeaway here is this self-view.layout if needed. Well, what is that? Interestingly enough, it allows you to perform a layout change when the drawing cycle happens. So for example, if you change the value of a constraint, like you clicked on a table view cell and you want to expand this cell, well, and so it's not choppy, iOS tries to accommodate that expansion with something called layout if needed. And if you call this in an animation block, it allows for a smooth flow in animation, which is going to be really, really nice, right? Okay, so the last thing we need to do is we need to flip the is showing value back to the opposite of what it was, right? So that the next time we get the appropriate value. So let's run this and see what we get. If I hit show menu, look at that. I get a cool little slide out. Now, if I wanted this to be, 50% of the width, I could just divide by 2, right? And that would give me a full 50%. We'll come all the way out 50%. And I can play with the values of the entire animation. So you see how it comes out 50% now and tailor it to however I want my app to actually be. And that's pretty much it. The one thing we might want to do to make it more real to life is add a shadow here. And I can do that really simply through using something called an extension. Oops. I'm outside of my class, right? I'm just going to make an extension on a UI view. And I'm going to have a function called add a shadow. Add, I can spell. Let's make this more descriptive. Func add custom menu shadow, like that. Okay, and we can easily call our layer property in here, which is our core animation layer, and this is how you access the shadow and the offset and the opacity. We're going to say shadow offset, right? Which the offset is the points, the layer shadow, which is animatable actually, which is really cool. And we have to set this to, because I believe this wants a CG size. Give it a second. Yes, expecting a CG size, right? All right. So we'll assign this to a CG size, right? What is the CG size? It consists of a float, width, and height, right? Okay, so we'll use a 5 for the width. That's basically how wide we want it to be. And how tall we want it to be is the same size as that actual view. So we'll say self.menu view here. Actually, I can just say self.frame.height, right? Because this is applying to the actual view. And then the last thing we want to do is set probably, I would say, the opacity on the shadow. So layer.shadow opacity, which is this guy. And we'll just set it equal to, this is how dark or how light you want it. We'll set it to 0.1. So we can add this custom menu shadow, right, into our initializer when we create, I'm sorry, not initializer, into our actual menu bar. So we'll say view.add shadow, right? Add custom menu shadow here. So let's see what that looks like. Now you'll notice the reason I offset this entire view's left anchor and assigned it back in here is because if you don't add this -10 or whatever constant offset, you'll see the shadow in the actual view here. So I did that, and now you can see that real-to-life shadow right there. So that's it. So if you guys have any questions, you want a copy of the code, more explanation of the code, please leave a comment and let me know. If you guys have any requests like this one or any feedback, please shoot me a message. All right, take